Welcome to ParenTween Connection Talks, where we bring you insight from the experts who can help you navigate life with teens and tweens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your host and founder of the ParenTween Connection. I've worked with teenagers and their families for more than 20 years, and I believe that the more supported and knowledgeable their parents and members of the proverbial village feel, the better they can connect with and advocate for their teens and tweens. And ultimately, that means we'll lose fewer kids to suicide. So join us as ParenTween Connection talks about anything and everything teen and tween related. And when we're done, we invite you to come on over to our Facebook group to continue the conversations. Hi there, and welcome to ParenTween Connection Talks. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your founder, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have you here. This is the inaugural episode of ParenTween Connection Talks, and so I wanted to give you a little bit of background about who we are and why we're here, and what you can expect from us in the future. So, I'm an only child. I had a challenging relationship with my mom, and I don't have children of my own, but I've worked with teenagers and young adults for more than 20 years. I've been a test prep coach like SAT, ACT since the beginning of 1999. And in that time frame, I have worked with literally tens of thousands of students across the US and around the world as they've navigated a really intense process. And often the college admissions and grad school admissions process brings up so many emotions, not only for the teenagers, but also for their parents. And over the years, I've watched and I've navigated a lot of things with families. And often I've joked around that I play more the role of therapist than tutor in cases, helping students see things from their parents' perspectives, helping the parents see things from their students' perspectives as well. And when a friend of mine was going through some challenging stuff a few years ago with her 15-year-old daughter, I realized, wow, there's really just not much community for parents of teenagers. And so we created it. That's the whole concept of ParenTween Connection. We are a judgment-free zone, and I firmly believe that the more educated parents are, and the more supported parents, and to be fair, not just parents, but also proverbial members of the village that it takes to raise kids, the more supported we all feel, the better relationships we're going to have, and the better we're going to be able to advocate for the teenagers in our lives. Like I said, I had a tough relationship with my mom. I believe that she did the best that she could with what she knew, but I also imagine that she felt very alone at times and that she didn't always feel like she was doing the best or that she knew what she was doing or that knew where to start or where to go. So our goal is to create that community so that you can have other like-minded parents to lean on, to learn from, and we also introduce you to the professionals who can help you navigate life with teenagers. So if you haven't yet, definitely check out our website. It's simply ParenTweenConnection.com. It's 1T, and it will take you to our Facebook group. It'll give you information about ParenTween University. Certainly, you can also get more information about all of our podcasts. And ultimately, our goal is to help you feel more educated and supported. By the way, speaking of the podcast, this is also accessible on YouTube. So you can go and you can see videos for any of the interviews, especially the ones like the one that I'm about to share with you now, or the conversation I'm about to have with you, that have a visual component behind them. So as you learn more about ParenTween Connection, you'll see that we talk about ParenTween University, which is an educational platform for parents if you're interested. It includes exclusive information from many of our podcast guests, and it's loosely based around my signature coaching program called the Foundations of Connection. And I want to share these foundations with you as a launch to our podcast so that you understand the mentality that we bring to everything that we do in creating community and connection. So again, if you haven't checked us out on YouTube, you definitely want to, because you'll have some visuals here to follow along. So first thing, who am I? Like I said, I'm Clarissa. I'm the founder of the ParenTween Connection. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some pictures of the people in my world who are super important to me. We've got my mom, my dad, friends, my husband, my dogs, and myself. many of us have lost connection with ourselves. And if we don't have connection with ourselves, it's going to make it challenging for us to have improved connections with others. So I want you to think about someone in your life with whom you'd like to have a stronger connection. It could be with yourself. It could be with your inner self. It could be with your higher power if you have one in your belief system. It could be with your own parents. It could be with your teens. It could be with a partner. Connection is connection. And at the end of the day, the more we learn to connect, those skills transcend to all of our relationships. So the first step is to define what is connection. What does connection mean to you? We could look in the dictionary, and it's simply a relationship in which a person, thing, or idea is linked or associated with another. But what does that mean to you? Does it mean someone you love? Do you have to love someone to have connection with them? Is it somebody you have a relationship with? Is it somebody that you trust? Is it someone with whom you're willing to share being vulnerable? So if we define it, then the next step is to define what's missing. If you want to improve your connection with somebody else, what specific areas do you feel are lacking? What is it that you feel like isn't as connected? Once we've got that, we can actually launch into the foundations of connection. And all the letters of connection spell out the 10 foundations. So the first one is to create a safe space. Well, fundamentally, that means a place where we're not necessarily in physical danger. We don't have to worry about getting hit by a car or being worried about a dog running up and biting us or, any physical safety issues. But I encourage you to extend that to emotional safety and intellectual safety. So I threw a question out on social media some time back asking folks what they would think was a safe space or how they would define a safe space. And the reality is that most of them said one of two things. Either a safe space doesn't exist, or it's somewhere that I won't be judged for being authentically me. So I want you to think about this person with whom you'd like to improve your connection. Do you feel that they are a safe space for you to be authentically you? And then on the other side of the equation, are you a safe place for them to be authentically themselves? What do you believe about them? We're going to get into more of that, but think about whether you are that emotionally and intellectually safe space. And maybe you ask them and get their thoughts on it. So the C is create a safe space or a safe place. The next is observe. O is for observe. Obviously, there's the 5 senses. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? Some of us who have middle school boys in our world perhaps have noticed a certain aroma coming up lately. What do we hear? What do we taste? So we certainly rely on a lot of that, but I want you to go beyond that. I want you to pay attention to emotions. What are you observing? And one of the most powerful questions that you can ask is, what else? So I did an interview with Carrie Countess, who's the founder of Forever 14. She lost one of her sons to suicide. And the following academic year, her older son was studying AP Calculus. And he was just incredibly behind on this assignment. On a particular assignment. And she was like, you know what? This isn't my kid. Like, he's never the fall behind kind of kiddo. But golly, she just was like, did you get it done? Did you get it done? Did you get it done? And she was like nagging him. And she finally was like, you know what? Hang on a second. Whoa. She goes, what else is going on here? She said to him, she's like, dude, what's going on? What's really going on underneath this issue? Well, it turned out he'd been so distracted for a month or 2 months that he didn't remember anything that they had learned. And so it wasn't just a matter for him of getting this singular assignment done, but that he actually had to go back and relearn however much material that he just didn't remember in order to do the assignment. And he was so fantastically overwhelmed that he was paralyzed. So when you see a certain behavior cropping up or a certain situation, ask yourself, like, is this normal? What else is going on? What's really going on? And keep asking, what else? What else? Other things you can observe. Does your kiddo have, or your intended person that you're trying to connect with, do they have a particular favorite item of clothing? Have you seen them wear it recently? Have you seen their activities change recently? And all joking aside, have you noticed different smells? Are you concerned about drugs? Or is there a change in hygiene practices going on? Look for those other things. Tune into all of your senses. As far as taste goes, like, does your person like to cook, and has that suddenly changed? Have they not cooked their favorite meal recently? So stop and observe and ask yourself, what's really going on? What else could be happening? So then the next foundation, the first N, is non-judgment. I can't tell you how glad I and many of the people in my circles were when the American election was over this past fall, because the amount of nastiness that came out of it was just unfathomable. And a lot of that nastiness was founded in judgment. But here's the thing. Human beings, fundamentally, we need stories. We need explanation. We need to know why. So we feel the need to make things mean something. A vote for candidate A means you're blah, 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 blah. Or a vote for candidate B means you're such and such and thus and thus. And along with that comes judgment, because we have to bring meaning to it. We need to rationalize how it is that somebody could have possibly done something, whether it was vote for candidate A or candidate B, or whether they, how they could have possibly been thinking when they did X, Y, or Z. So here's my question for you. When you think about the person with whom you'd like to improve your connection, do you feel judged by this person? And in reflection, how might they feel judged by you? Because if they do feel judged, they will likely not consider you a safe space. Similarly, if you feel judged, you are not going to consider them a safe space. Listen to your words. Listen to what comes out of your mouth. We've got a lot of terms that are being tossed about and bantied about lately that really are rather judgy, whether it's a term for a woman who's being persnickety about something, or it's a term about somebody from a particular ethnic background, or a term for somebody who voted for candidate A or B. Pay attention to that and ask yourself, am I being judged or am I judging? And how is that impacting my relationship with this person? Create a safe space, observe, non-judgment. The next N actually has a parenthesis in front of it. It is smile and nod. What this means is zip it. Zip it. Zip it. In sales, anybody who has a background in sales, you're taught that the first person to speak loses. I think, however, that by giving somebody else the opportunity to speak first, gives them the opportunity to win. So often, we listen to respond. We're not even listening to what the other person is saying and trying to understand them. We're just listening to get ready to retort and to prove that we're right, or to convince them that our way is the way to go. The catch is, when we spend so much time focusing on why we're right, we're not listening to understand them. Here's my challenge to you. I want you to think back to the last time that you were in a heated conversation with this person. Did you ask them a question and honestly, genuinely give them the opportunity to respond? I want you to think back to it. I want you to replay it. I want you to recreate this situation in your mind. I want you to ask the question, and I want you to count to 30. And then here's the catch. If they start to say something, start over. Start counting over. Give them that time, especially if the person you want to improve your connection with is a youth, a middle schooler, early high schooler, even later high schooler. Their brains don't process as quickly all the time as we'd like them to. It's just a biological fact for them. And if we're not giving them the space to process their thinking, we're cutting them down before they even have a chance. So I challenge you to pause and give them 30 seconds. And literally every time they start to say something, let them finish, and then your count starts over. If you find that just insurmountable, my challenge to you is to ask questions or find a way to invite them to tell you more. One of my favorite phrases is, tell me more. Or, well, what do you mean by this? I'm not sure I understand. So take those, formulate your own question or your own invitation, and give them the space. This is what I was meaning earlier about intellectual space. Give them the space to learn how to engage. So smile and nod. Up next is E for explore or educate. We don't know what we don't know. Life is very different for teenagers today than it was for us. I mean, we all know this. But do we necessarily spend the time going and exploring and learning about things? Or do we just kind of fall into the, nope, I'm done. I don't need to know about that. That's not the way it's going to be. For example, I'm a Caucasian woman. I've grown up in the US my entire life. I don't know what it's like to be a Caucasian in another country. I don't know what it's like to be a person of color in this country. So with the racial injustice scenarios that we've had playing out that are becoming much more conversational, we're addressing them much more clearly and much more head on. Part of what I've been doing is educating myself about the experiences of people of color in our country. If your person that you want to improve connection with is of another race or another background or another sexuality or another whatever, take the time to go explore from others and educate yourself. If you've never been in a situation where you've been the trusted person for somebody to come out to, maybe go explore and find out, hey, how can I become that safe space for them to do that? Or if they've already done it, go to Google, go to community groups, find places where you can learn more. If somebody voted for the other guy, perhaps a conversation where you smile and nod and ask them, hey, what was your thinking? Instead of just making meaning out of it and saying, well, that means you're bloody blah. This is, again, exploring and educating. What if it turns out that you're raising a teenager that you've always expected to go to college and suddenly they're saying, I don't want to go to college? Maybe college isn't the right bet for them or the best bet. Maybe it's not the best next step. But explore. What are other options? Is the military a good option? Is a gap year a good option? Is going to work for a couple of years a good option? Explore those options. And then the next thing that comes out of exploring options is challenging your truths. And this is something I think that as adults, we tend to fall into the idea of like, I've got all this life experience and therefore I know what's right. And oftentimes we do. But that doesn't mean that what we think is right is the only way. Have you ever heard the phrase, there's three sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth? Perception is reality, my friends, and what we perceive is going to be what we believe to be true. So as you're educating yourself and as you're exploring, here's another fantastic question to incorporate. What if? What if my mom really did love me and she just didn't know how to show it? What if my kiddo isn't deliberately trying to push my buttons? He's just kind of doing it naturally. What if there are shades of gray, so to speak, and it's not all just black and white? What if I think I've never met anybody who was gay, but what if I did, and what if I wasn't the safe space for them to share that with? Again, what if? What if? What if this isn't the only way? Not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying there's an absolute right or wrong. I'm just saying, what if there's another way as we challenge our truths? Here's the catch. Doing this takes time, and it takes a willingness to let it take time. And this is potentially the most frustrating foundation of all. The T. Take time, and the process takes time. We live in a world of instant gratification. We have a calculator in our phones. Remember all of our teachers who were like, you're not always going to have a calculator with you. And now we're all like, check it out. Yes, I do. We can get answers to everything. We don't even have to type anything in. We can be like, hey, Siri, or hey, whoever. I can't say it because I have one in the room. She'll respond. And we get answers immediately. But the fact of the matter is that human connection is not established overnight, and it is not changed overnight. Reminder that you can only control you. You can only control how you show up in a situation. You can't control anyone or anything else. But here's what can happen. I had a therapist describe it to me once as two people in relationship are like a pair of hands that are dancing, facing each other. And they get used to this very consistent back and forth. Very comfortable back and forth. But then one dance partner suddenly changes the moves. And maybe that dance partner squats down. Well, and if that dance partner all of a sudden squats down, then the other dance partner is left going, well, what just happened? Things just changed. So what you need to keep in mind is that in this relationship you have with this other person, you've fallen into a dance pattern. And if you, knowing that you can only control yourself and how you show up in this relationship, if you change the dance pattern, it is going to likely be very unsettling for the other person. So be prepared for that. This is part of why it takes time, because that other person needs to adjust. I was chatting with a woman last evening whose daughter is in 9th grade. It's been a very tumultuous year, not just because of COVID, but just a lot of things. The daughters started failing grades or failing classes, and there was just a lot of angst and a lot of difficulty. And the mom reached out to me last night and said, Clarissa, you're never going to believe it. My daughter has a 3.8 GPA. I was like, holy crap, from failing to 3.8. How did that happen? She said, I finally took away her phone and she worked her butt off to get her privileges back. That was a very challenging situation for mom. Finally taking away the phone was the last straw. Mom changed her dance step, and it was very uncomfortable for her daughter. But the daughter adjusted. Now, granted, it didn't happen overnight, but she adjusted and she fell into the new dance pattern with mom. So remember that the process takes time, and sometimes because your adjustment can be unsettling for the other person, sometimes it's going to get a little dicey. The whole, sometimes it's going to get worse before it gets better rings true here. So once you've done some exploration and some education, and you've challenged your truths, and you've acknowledged that it's going to take some time, innovation is an important factor here. So we've challenged truths. Maybe my way isn't the only way. Maybe my way isn't the only right way. How can this be different? Different doesn't have to mean good or bad. Different just means different. So what are some new ways that we can approach this? And so this is where I encourage you to try to take your brain out of the situation and think about what feels comfortable. I was talking with another woman the other day who said, I have spent so long listening to my brain and being very articulated, very intentional, very intellectual in my interactions. I don't even know what my gut is saying anymore. I don't know how to trust my gut. And I think there's a lot of us that fall into that. We get so busy and we think that our brains are going to have all of the answers. So part of what you can do here in terms of innovating is also learning to listen to your intuition. This is where the connection to yourself can be really valuable. Some tools that you can use here: journaling, yoga, physical activity, meditation or mindfulness, however that shows up comfortably for you, if it does. Tools that help you listen into your gut and listen to your heart can be profoundly impactful along the way. Doesn't matter how many books you read about how to listen to middle schoolers or how to deal with teenagers or how many parenting coaches you go to. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, it may not be the right fit for you. As you're innovating and as you're listening to intuition, give yourself room to consider, I'd never thought of it that way. Or maybe you can respond to this other person and say, you might be onto something. If it's something that maybe you're uncomfortable with to begin with, perhaps you could consider responding with something like, thank you for sharing. That gives me something to think about. Because that way you're not responding with a right or wrong. It's a bit more, some might say, empathetic way of going, hey, I'm at least willing to consider that there's another way of looking at this. So the I is innovate and intuition. As you're going along with this, our next to last letter, the O, is to own your own story or own your own stuff. I worked with a coach, goodness, this is going probably a decade back, who was helping me to look at how I was getting in my own way on some things. The reality is we can get in our own way in our relationships and our connection with others. And this coach says to me, if we don't own our triggers, if we don't recognize what our triggers are, we're never going to grow and we're never going to improve in our relationships. Because he said our triggers are like wash rags doused in gasoline, just waiting for a spark. So I want you to think, what have I gotten really angry about recently? And why? Was it really what this person said to me, my kid, my spouse, my partner, my parent? Was it really what they said? Or is it tying back to some event in my experience where something similar happened and I had a negative outcome? Because if we can find those triggers, if we can find those wash rags that are doused in gasoline, and if we can at least dry them out a little bit, maybe they're not soaked in gasoline, but maybe they're dry or they're just sprayed with gasoline, maybe the next time that we get triggered, we won't respond nearly as significantly. The number of times, my friends, that I have worked with families where the parents or even the older siblings respond so emotionally when the younger sibling says or does something, and the folks who are doing the responding don't recognize that, hey, they're playing a part here as well. I can't tell you how often that's happened. But the reality is none of us is perfect, and we got to own our own, the role that we play in the situation. And the last N is for nurturing. Nurturing means to care for, to encourage the growth or development of. And I'm a big believer that we don't stop learning until we die. We don't stop growing until we die. So there's always opportunity, not only for us to nurture others, but also for us to nurture ourselves. The reality is, though, that many adults in the proverbial village end up giving so much to the others, to the teens, to their partners, to their jobs, to their friends, that we don't take care of ourselves nearly as effectively as we could. And I am just as guilty of this as the next guy. So I encourage you to consider nurturing of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, if that's part of your world. Nurture yourself as much as you nurture others, or at least aim for it. I read a book recently where the author was talking about self-care and self-development, and she was talking about a mentee that she had been working with who recognized that journaling helped him stay focused, helped him stay grounded, helped him stay connected and present in his everyday life. And after a period of coaching, he had gone off on his way, and they reconnected sometime down the road. And the coach said to this gentleman, well, hey, how's it going? And things had just devolved. They had just disintegrated. And she said, how's your journaling practice going? And he's like, I haven't had time for it. And she said to him, so you acknowledged that this one thing, this one commitment can make a drastic difference in every area of your life, and you don't do it. And she relates in the book that he looked back at her almost like she had smacked him. But he said, wow, I never thought about it that way. So again, I encourage you to consider 5 minutes a day for yourself. Nurturing yourself, because you cannot water plants from a watering can that is empty. You've got to fill the watering can first. So you're certainly working to nurture yourself. Obviously, the relationship you want to improve. But then I want you to think of like a target, right? If you're throwing darts and you live in the middle of that target. So we have to start with the middle, and then we nurture the people in the first circle out. And then consider how nurturing ourselves and the people in that next circle can then influence the next circle out, and the next circle out, and the next circle out. It ends up being a case where it's like a pebble in the water has ripple effects that we'll never see. So this is where I want to leave you. Connection. Create a safe place. Observe. Non-judgment. Smile and nod. Explore. Challenge your truths. Take time, and the process takes time. Innovate and listen to your intuition. Own your own story, and then nurture. These are not linear. They are not intended to be a linear one step after the next process. If one of these pieces resonated for you, dig into it a little bit. You can absolutely always reach out to me at the ParenTween Connection. You can find us in our Facebook group. You can connect with me there as well. I'd love to know your thoughts. And I hope that this helps you improve your connection with yourself, with a parent or a child or a partner or a friend. And I hope it helps you take the next steps. Well, that wraps up today's episode of ParenTween Connection Talks. Be sure to check the show notes for any links we mentioned. Also, be sure to subscribe to ParenTween Connection Talks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so you don't miss out on any awesome information. If you'd like your own copy of the Foundations of Connection, you can find it right on our homepage at ParenTweenConnection.com. Print it out, hang it on your fridge, and use it as a conversation starter with the folks in your family today. And if you want to feel more supported as a parent and have a closer, healthier, happier relationship with the tween in your life, enroll in ParenTween University. For just $19.99 a month or $199 a year, you'll join a community of parents just like you who are dedicated to having the best relationships they can with their kids. You'll receive exclusive bonus trainings from many of our podcast guests and access to monthly group coaching calls based on my signature coaching program, The Foundations of Connection. So go to www.ParenTweenConnection.com today to help ensure that you're the one your kids will talk to when they need someone they can trust. Until next time, keep talking and keep connecting.